Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated, but there is a better way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to every type of live event. And right now, get $20 off your first purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code WINGO today.
Golic and Wingo on a Friday morning. Glad you're with us on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Today, by the way, we should point out the final day of V Week. So if you can, please join ESPN and the V Foundation in its fight against cancer. Visit v.org/donate. And again, it's important to get this point right. Every single penny that you donate goes directly to the fight against cancer and the research. There is no administrative cost. By that, what we mean, just so people understand, the V Foundation is fully endowed, fully funded. That's already taken care of by other things. So every single penny, dollar you donate goes exactly to where you want it to go, to the research to fight against cancer.
Yeah, and we appreciate anything that anybody can give. We know you have different areas or different focuses maybe that you have with foundations or charities, and obviously, that is fantastic for what you do, but for those that can give to this cause, we truly do appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. So do what you can. Again, it's the final day of V-Week for us, something that's near and dear to our hearts for a lot of reasons. All right, lots to get to in this final hour. Scott Frost, the new head coach of Nebraska, his alma mater, will join us, talk about the transition from UCF, the undefeated season, and his choice of shoe attire at the awards last night.
And I have a first question for him. I'm going to make him decide what he was most excited about, and I'm going to give him 3 choices.
I don't even want to know what they are.
I know. I'm not going to tell you. Okay.
I want to soak that in at the exact same time. And Jalen Rose will join us at the bottom of the hour, talk about what's going on in the NBA, the hot streak for the Cavaliers, what to make of the trade, and what he thinks about Joel Embiid and what the future is for the Sixers now with that and Ben Simmons, and hopefully they get Markelle Fultz back sooner rather than later. But there was a big game in the NFL last night, and essentially it kept the Atlanta Falcons in the playoff hunt, but more specifically in the hunt for the division title.
Yeah, it did. They get the 2017 win over Deion Jones had the final interception. It was a great interception as Drew Brees was trying to get that game winner into Josh Hill, the tight end. And you see that tight end going down the middle in the end zone and the quarterback trying to get it up high there to him. It was a nice attempt, but Deion Jones just a fantastic pick to seal that one as Matt Ryan throws 3 interceptions, 2 his fault, 1 not, and he's now 2-0 when his team when he throws 3 interceptions. It's just amazing. One of the biggest differences here is we've talked a lot about, we know the high-flying passing game that both Matt Ryan can have and Drew Brees can have, but New Orleans was 2nd in the league in rushing, and Atlanta was 6th in the league in rushing. These two teams have had a two-headed monster of rushing attack. Now, Freeman missed a little bit of time, and so that had dropped a little bit, but when both teams have both their running backs, they are tough to stop. Well, we saw it what we saw last night was a little bit of old school
how about that,
Saints, because Alvin Kamara gets hurt early in this game. He already had 3 catches, though, and a couple of runs. And Mark Ingram came into the game with a bad toe, and now he had to foot the load, no pun intended. But they only ran the ball in a close game. They only ran the ball 15 times. Brees threw it 35 times. So the game plan really changed when Kamara went out of the game, and you had the bad toe for Ingram as far as carrying the load, and it was Atlanta that was able to take advantage, even with the 3 interceptions, of getting the job done.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, and it brings up the question: do we trust Atlanta? Are you willing to trust Atlanta now? Because they've been sort of all over the map. They had that big win against the Cowboys where Adrian Claiborne went nuts. By the way, he finally got his first sack since that
six-sack
game. I think he's 1 more sack away from getting that bonus up from 750 to over $1 million.
Nice.
And if he can get 3 more, I think it goes up to $1.25 million. And I'm sure the Falcons, when they wrote that incentive clause, Adrian Claiborne, not really a sacker, but hey, if you get 12, we'll give you $1.25 million.
They're going, uh-oh.
My bad. Got to write a larger bonus for Adrian Claiborne. But do you trust him? Are you willing to trust Atlanta now?
Offensively, I do, even though they didn't put up a ton of points last night, but New Orleans defense, we know, is playing better. They have the ability to have that breakout game and score points with what they can do. Defensively, I think just like with New Orleans, we're not used to seeing New Orleans with a really good defense, and quite honestly, we're not used to seeing that out of Atlanta, though we did see it obviously some last year when they went to the Super Bowl. So that's the side of the ball. Listen, I know Matt Ryan, when push comes to shove, you can throw a 50-50 ball to Julio Jones and things could work out well. or you could have the two-headed monster rushing attack. I know at times I can trust Drew Brees to make that quality throw to help the offense. So I still look at the defensive sides of the balls as a side of the ball that I need to see the consistency from.
And we got the big play from them, last week or last night rather, with Deion Jones with the interception. And quite frankly, their defense was the reason they were in the game last week against Minnesota. I mean, they basically kept Minnesota from pounding the rock and having the big plays to Thielen and Diggs. It was the offense that's just sort of sputtered their way through that game.
Yeah, it is. So you're waiting, you want that, but you know, at least I feel like that offense can break out. But that defense, I really do. You know what Dan Quinn wanted to get there, and he got it. So we got it that speed. It's a little more undersized, but they have the speed. Did you see the one offensive play that they had last night by the goal line? Poe, the nose tackle, was a fullback.
Yes, and Tyson Bryo also went out.
So you had a D lineman who was eligible, and you had an offensive lineman who was eligible in the end zone at the same time, and it was an incomplete pass.
Right. I love the creativity. Yeah. Dontari Poe has thrown for a touchdown and caught a touchdown.
He's running an out route from a fullback position. Yeah.
I thought to myself when I put that on Twitter, when you have two linemen go out in an end zone package as wide receivers, you're maybe doing too much.
Is that really none?
Really? I mean, Tyson Bryo at the back of the end zone and then Dontari Poe. You do one or the other.
Yeah.
But why don't we let Mohamed Sanu, Tevin Coleman, Devontae Freeman, and Julio Jones be the ones that go all over?
That was very
I thought that might have been taking it one step just to say, hey, look what we can do.
Look what we can do.
And you know what it was? Incomplete pass.
Incomplete pass.
All right. Yeah. So you who didn't have a lot of incomplete passes or any incomplete games this year? Scott Frost is the head coach at UCF. And, of course, Scott Frost is moving on to his alma mater, the new Nebraska head coach. And he joins us now on Golic and Wingo. First of all, Scott, congratulations. It's been a great season for you and obviously a crazy Saturday where you took the Nebraska job and then you had that amazing title game about Memphis. That had to be sort of one of the most weird days you've had in a long time, but it literally came out as a win-win.
It was bittersweet. It really was. Having that championship with the guys was special. That's an unbelievable group of men down there that made that happen, and it was as difficult a thing as I've done to leave them, but then getting up here to my home and my alma mater and being greeted by a bunch of former players and family, it was a special day.
And we'll certainly get to that. Let's talk about the broad picture of the playoff situation right now. Here you do win all your games that are in front of you. You do all that you can do. And yet, even if it were an 8-team playoff, you guys would have been left out because you sit at number 12. Do you see it changing at all or how it can change? Because right now you're not in the Power 5. It's like you're hitting a glass ceiling and not getting past that.
Mike, I think, to be honest with you, I think the glass ceiling was put there intentionally. It was apparent to me that every single week the committee made a decision. We have to keep them at a certain place in the rankings so that we don't run into the trouble of having to move them up if people ahead of them lose. And every week a new 2-loss team or a new 3-loss team was moved ahead of us. I remember Iowa State getting moved ahead of us. Everybody thought they were great. They lost the next week. Then Washington State, all these people kept getting moved ahead with either 2 or 3 losses. Finally, they moved Stanford ahead of us, who must be better than UCF because they're a Power 5 team. Well, they lost to a Group of 5 team. So I think a lot of assumptions were made. And to answer your question, I really think if it was an 8-team playoff, we might be 6 or 7. UCF might be 6 or 7 because at that point the committee might say, okay, now that there's 8 teams, it's okay to have a Group of 5 team in.
I completely agree. I've always said I think it should end up at an 8-team playoff, and that's the way a Group of 5 team can get in, and I agree with you. I think it would have went that way. But, yeah, it's got to be so frustrating seeing these teams losing and passing you to boot. So does that put even more on your that final talk to the team in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl where you're playing against Auburn, a team that was one game away from being in the playoffs? Now, they're not going to be in the playoffs, but you do get a chance to prove yourself against one of the top teams in the country.
Listen, we haven't talked about it all year because I didn't want to be one of those coaches that started talking about it, then you lose the next game and you look like a fool. But we're there now, and we have a lot of other things to deal with. Our staff has to get back and make sure the players are okay, make sure they're okay with us coaching them, try to rally them to play one more game together. We're playing against a really good team, so we have a lot of things to worry about. But I do think there will be a little bit of a chip on the shoulder of some of the guys that feel like they may have been slighted a little this year.
Scott Frost with us as he is now making the transition from being an undefeated coach at UCF and getting them into a big bowl game in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl against Auburn, and now coaching his alma mater. You know, it's always a discussion that comes up this time of the year, Scott, when coaches make that transition and make that change, and a lot of coaches and a lot of people feel like coaches don't do that the right way. But it seems like from top to bottom, the way this has been handled from UCF for you and Nebraska, it has been done the first-class way and making sure everybody's taken care of. I loved the photo that UCF put out of you with your teammates, or your players, rather, after the game, saying we sent him out a winner. How important was it for you to make sure that process was respected on both sides here?
It was really important, and what I was going to make sure I did was do things the right way. My priority was the players there. We tried to keep it all off their plate as much as we could to try to help them win games. The coaches remained focused on the games we had to win down there, and we did a good job finishing the season. My next priority was to make sure that the staff was taken care of, and I gave them all an opportunity to decide whether they wanted to come here with me or not. I watched a lot of other coaches take the next step and get jobs, and they leave people behind, and they say, you were good enough to help me win there, but you're not good enough to help me win at my next one. And like I said, my priority was the players first, and then making sure that my staff that helped us be 12-0 was taken care of.
Scott Frost, the new coach at Alabama, joining us now. He's your Home Depot Coach of the Year.
Alabama?
I'm sorry, no, I say Alabama. My fault. Wow.
Scott, just so you know, he's had a rough morning. He also referred to our show as Mike and Mike. So
I did.
It's not just you. I want you to know that.
That's still weighing on my mind. You are certainly not coaching at Alabama. Some guy named Saban is probably going to be there for a little while. So Scott Frost going to his alma mater in Nebraska. What did you say, and how difficult was it when you did tell the team? I mean, we know all the report. We saw how it went. The reports were out there. Todd McShay asked you on the field and such. But when you finally had a chance to talk to your team of how difficult that was.
Well, it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done, Mike. And it was a tough decision. I had such a good relationship with UCF and the players there. My wife loved it there. We liked living in Orlando. It really was a tough decision. And when I finally made the decision, it was the week of that championship game, and we tried to keep the players focused and the coaches focused, and decided the best way to tell the team was after the game. So we won the game and celebrated, and I called the team back in to the team meeting room about an hour and a half later, and cried when I told them, and then had a bunch of people, a line of players come in and thank me and tell me goodbye, and that was difficult. That's a special group of kids. You don't go from 0-12 to 12-0 unless you have a special group of human beings, and those guys will be one of my favorite teams as long as I live.
Scott Frost with us here, the new Nebraska head coach. You won the Home Depot Coach of the Year, and by the way, got major raves for your shoe wear.
Yeah, the Yeezys. How about that?
Well done. A lot of people took notice of that, so tip of the cap to you on that one. But Scott, I just want to be clear: is it locked in stone that you will be coaching UCF in the Peach Bowl, or is that still something that's being negotiated?
No, we want to do it. We just got to make sure that both sides are okay with it and we can work it out. You know, it's touchy, and there's no good way to break up. A lot of our staff is up here in Nebraska recruiting already, and our kids are down there, and they're hiring new staff, and there's new people in my office, and we just got to make sure all those things are worked out. Got to make sure UCF honors their commitment to take care of my assistants with the bonuses they've earned, and that they're being compensated for it. And there's a lot of things to work out, but our heart is with those kids, and those kids deserve the best chance they can possibly have to play well against Auburn, and I think that's with us going back to coach them.
Yeah, let's. I was going to say that's a decision I'm sure that's going to have to be made pretty soon. We heard Nick Saban talking about with Jeremy Pruitt, their coordinator that's going on to coach at Tennessee, about kind of doing both. And sometimes, Scott, they say when you try and do both, you're not doing either, instead of just kind of concentrating on one. So as far as like a decision on that, and the best interest of the players, I'm sure, as you would agree, needs to be first and foremost here. So when do you think all that will be ironed out?
I think today, tomorrow, this weekend. Right now, our plan as a staff is to go back down and have practices this week. regardless of what happened, we would have taken 1 week off. UCF's players played 12 straight weeks because of the hurricane early in the year and losing our bye week, so they needed some time off. And our plan for a New Year's Bowl would have been to practice 3 times this next week, and that's what we intend to do right now.
So now you go back home to Nebraska, where you won a national championship in '97. Actually beat Peyton Manning in Tennessee. You smoked them in the Orange Bowl that year. I think it was 42-17. So you go back there. So what will be the first order of business to talk to a team there that was 4-8 last year and looking to really get back to what they were?
There's a lot of messages I want to send to them. The first is we're going to have fun, but we're not going to get there without a lot of hard work and effort. And I think we managed to do that at UCF while enjoying being around each other and having as much fun as anybody in college football. I don't want to make it about me. I don't want to make it about the past. It's about these kids, and it's about the here and now. But I want our players to know their standards at Nebraska that we're going to expect and the people here expect. We're going to have a tough team. We're going to have a physical team. We're going to work harder than anybody else on the field and in the weight room. And we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. And those are the kind of things that the people in Nebraska stand for and the program stood for when I was here. And like I said, it's about these kids in the here and now, but those things are never going to change.
Certainly got to be going to be, I would imagine, a lot of fun to go back and coach your alma mater where you had such success. So this brings me to my question. What were you most excited about? Winning the national championship in Nebraska, going 13-0, winning that last game against Memphis, winning the conference, going 13-0, or knowing that you're a huge Cubs fan when the Cubs won the World Series?
Oh, man, that's tough. Actually, one of the Ricketts brothers called me this year during the season, and that was a thrill for me, too, being a Cubs fan. But you mentioned all those 3 things, Mike. I had my first son a little over a month ago, and I know you're getting to work with your son now, and it's the most special thing that could ever happen to a guy. So as good a year as this has been, that's definitely the highlight.
I would imagine so. Just wait till he gets to be 28 and doesn't listen to you anymore like mine does. That sits next to me in the show. Then you may have a different thought.
Hey.
That's obvious watching the show. Yeah.
Hey, Scott, if you make it to 28 and he's not listening to you, that's a win. Mine stopped at like 14. Normally there will be a time.
Good to know.
Just tell it. There's a time where they hang on every word you say, and they think that you know everything. And then when they start to get a little older, they suddenly think you don't know anything.
You know what? It's kind of like freshman year to senior year, what they're going to think of you, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Scott, we appreciate you getting up early with us. Congratulations on a great season and the award for Coach of the Year, and best of luck at your alma mater in Nebraska.
I appreciate that, guys. Love the show. Keep doing what you do.
Thanks Scott. Appreciate it.
We talk a lot about this in this transition time, and you have how Jimbo Fisher handled the transition, and Willie Taggart, who seems to make this a yearly occurrence.
Yeah.
Again, 4 bowls that his teams have been eligible for. They only coach them in 1.
Yeah.
The way Scott Frost, UCF, and to Nebraska's credit, Nebraska have managed to try and make this as smooth as possible is the way you always want to see it happen.
And the main thing, because sometimes it can't be smooth. I get it. Sometimes, like in that UCF Memphis game, the report came out during the game.
Right.
So that makes it a little tougher. Todd McShay has to ask that question. Anybody at any network is going to ask the question at that point. And I love Scott Frost's answer. I'm going to go celebrate with my team. I thought it was a great answer, but it muddies the water a little bit. But the bottom line, as I've always said, is that coach somehow, some way has to communicate with that team. And whether the cat gets out of the bag or it's before it happens, that there is some sort of settlement, and sometimes there's players that walk out of there still mad at the coach for leaving.
Right.
I think there's more.
That's always going to be. You're never going to get 100% on anything.
But you have to talk to that team, and it all certainly seemed to work out there for Scott. I don't think anybody was shocked he was going to take this job in Nebraska, and the way the both schools handled, you're right, was done very well.
And honestly, for all the things that he's done and all the things that he said, what impressed me most about Scott just there, he says, I want to make sure that the school that I'm leaving honors the commitment they had to my coaches about getting their bonuses.
Right.
I mean, that tells me that whether it works or not is always subjective, but they have the right guy to see if it can work in Nebraska.
Right, exactly.
And we wish him all the best going forward. And rocking the Yeezys, the younger generation, very impressed. Very impressed with
Plus,
the
I had him
shoes.
coaching Alabama.
There you go. Well, you had the show back to what it was for 18
Filling
years.
up the swear
so
jar.
you're doing great so far today.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
You're making things easier for me.
Friday, right?
Which I appreciate. Oh, it's a Friday. No question. Coming up, we got the top 2 picks from the 2016 draft facing off in the NFL this weekend. And we've had that in the NBA last night. Simmons versus Ingram. We'll get to all of that coming up.
Hey everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS consumeraccess.org number 3030.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I've never felt more alive.
Disclaimer. Geico cannot guarantee you will feel more alive. You either possess functioning respiratory and circulatory systems, or you do not, or you are a zombie. If you are indeed a brain-starved zombie and you would like to save money on car insurance, the Geico legal team applauds your excellent life choices, even in your shambling afterlife. But we strongly encourage you to visit geico.com or download the Geico app. Please stay a minimum of 500 feet away from our large and presumably delicious, delicious brains.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Rolling through the final half hour on Golick and Wingo. Glad you're with us on ESPN Radio and ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. And again, all phone guests appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Jalen Rose is going to be joining us in just a few minutes, but it came up again last night after the loss. There were a bunch of injuries. I think 6 players went out injury-wise for the Saints. Thursday night game. This has been sort of a recurring theme every week here after a Thursday night game, most notably with the team that loses.
Right.
This is what Drew Brees had to say about why there were so many injuries.
It's 100% a product of playing on Thursday night. Do you understand what guys' bodies go through, in a game, and then to have to turn around 4 days later and to play? I mean, look at the injury studies. They're off the charts. So is this smart as it pertains to guys' health and safety? No, absolutely not.
Listen, Drew is one of the most respected guys out there, no doubt about it.
No
we know
question.
He's walking into Hall of Fame, but he's flat out wrong there. I mean, he's just stating a wrong stat. There are no more injuries. In fact, there are less injuries on Thursday night by average over Sunday and Monday games. We for the last 4 years there are less injuries. There are basically turnovers. So if you want to go away from the injuries and say they're ugly games, the turnover rates are flat. There's no more turnovers on Thursday nights. The only thing there's more of is there's 3 more total penalties per game on average than on Sundays and Mondays. But the main thing is it's about the health, and the injuries is just a false statement. And listen, I'm a former player, and for most of the time, just about all the time, I'm on the player's side on things, but I also, am sitting in this job and being an analyst and looking at numbers and saying that's a wrong statement. There aren't more injuries on Thursday, and everybody complains about the Thursday games, and I'm not sure what the answer is going to be because the owners are not giving up money.
Nope.
So in comparison or along with, the owners making their money is tied to the players because they get a percentage of it. So if there's less money out there, the players are getting less money. So no, I know nobody's talking about that. And we're getting a lot of feedback, Trey. And most people say, why don't they just put the bye week, the Sunday before a Thursday game for every team that plays on a Thursday?
Well, you'd have to adjust it. It's possible to do, but you'd need a second bye, basically, is the way to make it work. And look, I'd be fine with that. And look, I'm sure people are going nuts on you about this.
And that's fine.
No one is saying that it's not difficult.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
No one is saying, Mike's not saying it's not hard, but there's no statistical evidence that shows you I think it's over 4 years is what we're talking about here, right? That the injury rate actually goes up. I mean, the Falcons, for example, had no injuries in that game.
They had none.
In that game.
And New Orleans had, 5 or 6 right in that area there. So you could say for the one side, look at all the injuries, and the other side, look at no injuries. So I don't know where you want to go with that. And now, can you talk about cumulative effect? Maybe you don't get injured on Thursday, but you had less time to heal. So are you more susceptible that next week, which, oh, by the way, is now 10 days away? I did 2 Thanksgiving games, which are on Thursdays. And it is tough. It's definitely tough. You don't put pads on. It's way more mental than anything else. You go through that. And physically, you're just trying to recover. and it is hard to do. But I think too much is being made of the safety aspect, and this when there's no data that says it's any worse to play on Thursday night.
Right.
You're hearing it mostly out of the teams that lose, and saying this is one of the reasons why that they're losing. I just don't buy it as much, and the teams play just one game on Thursdays. Now Dallas played two, but it was Thursday to Thursday,
right?
So it was still a normal week in between. So I'm just not as crazed about this for a guy who did play a couple of Thursday games, and teams will do it once as far as having only that 4 days in between. So I am just not as caught up in it as, oh my God, nobody thinks about the safety of the players. I don't know how they're doing it when there's no data that shows that it's damaging them anymore.
Again, then the question becomes, is it oversaturation? Well, not really, because according to the research, the number one rated show on television right now is Sunday Night Football. And then I think fifth is Thursday Night Football.
Yeah.
So no, third is Thursday Night Football. I think fifth is a post-game show. So I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yep.
So we'll see what happens with that going forward. We got a few more of those left. Delighted to be joined now by Jalen Rose on Golic and Wingo. How you doing, brother?
Congratulations! I've been watching the show the last 11 days.
Yes.
You guys are doing a terrific job.
Thank you.
11 days in, what a roll we got going.
Only a few thousand more to go.
and one quick question before I want to derail the whole topic. But
no worries.
No, go ahead. We do that ourselves.
Why can't they just give everybody a bye week before they play a Thursday
You
game?
would probably you'd have to go back to 2 byes to make it work from week 1 to week 16.
It's possible.
They did 2 byes. My last year in the league was 93. They did 2 byes then. And I'd be all for that.
Correct.
I'd be all for that. Now, let's see what the reasons are. I think it's a great solution. Now, I'd have to look at the other side of it, of why they would say we don't want to do it. But if you did go to 2 byes, you absolutely could do something like that.
The NBA, when they see healthy players rested on national TV games, guess what they did? They moved the season up 2 weeks.
Yeah, they did.
Exactly
They eliminated
right.
that right off the top. Just a suggestion.
All right, so let's talk about what we've seen with Cleveland. They obviously got off to that horrible start. Now they have a chance to go for a franchise record 14th straight win tonight when they take on the Pacers. However, their opponents during this 13-game winning streak, win percentage below 400 for the season. So what do you make of what we've seen out of this 13-game winning streak?
It does mean something to win 14 straight games regardless of the competition, because during the 82-game schedule, there's scheduling losses that are built in, whether it's back-to-backs, whether certain players have dealt with injuries or not. But I attribute this to LeBron James in his 15th year has gotten better at basketball. I remember earlier in his career, he was so used to handling the ball like a point forward, facing and dribble driving, that when he shot a jump shot, you were like, thank you. Even if he made it. Now his post game is better. His 3-point shot is better. He's getting to the basket and finishing over the top a lot better. So that improvement has now allowed Kevin Love to fall in line from going to being the number 3 option to the number 2 without Kyrie Irving, getting his double-doubles, shooting his threes, playing the 5. The second unit has now gotten balanced with Dwayne Wade handling the ball, him scoring. So the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think, have gotten overlooked in the dynamic of so many people ready to just crown the Golden State Warriors champions this year. If Isaiah Thomas comes back and he's a function of the player that he was last year, that averaged almost 29 points, I would say that the Cleveland Cavaliers are eye to eye with the Golden State Warriors as it relates to who's going to win it all.
What on the court with Isaiah Thomas is going to make this team better? Is part of it going to be that LeBron will have to handle the ball less, with the age on his legs? I mean, how does that dynamic going to work?
I think the thing that Isaiah Thomas brings to the table is that he's herky-jerky. So all of a sudden he got the ball. Kyrie Irving is smooth. He's like a luxury vehicle.
Right.
Isaiah Thomas is more like a stick shift. They both still get you where they have to go. But what happens with a guy like that, he has unlimited range. He could get you 15, 20 points in a quarter. And all of a sudden now it's not as much pressure on LeBron James to score the ball, put up big numbers, especially late, because Isaiah Thomas was terrific in the fourth quarter. It balances their lineup, legitimizes their starting 5 when you get Tristan Thompson back as well. Hopefully they get Derrick Rose back with the second lineup. Now they have 2 legitimate teams, and I think they have more depth than the Golden State Warriors overall.
Golic and Wingo presented on ESPN Radio and ESPN2 by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Jalen Rose is here in person. So we've talked a lot about Isaiah Thomas coming back from his injury and what that may mean to the Cavs. What about Kawhi Leonard? The Spurs now are 17-8 on the year.
Spurs, go!
Without their best player. Yeah. Reports are that he could return as early as tomorrow. Obviously, this quad injury, a lot more serious than people thought. How dangerous are they at full strength to not only the Warriors, but also the hot start that the Rockets have been off to?
You're a smart man. Well, here's what ends up happening.
By the way, that's the first time and last time that will ever be said on this show.
Very true.
So clip it off and save it.
Thank you. Because here's what ends up happening. We get so excited about the flavor of the moment, and rightfully so. The Golden State Warriors, they're the defending champions. They deserve their praise. The Houston Rockets, they've been consistent over the last few years. I think James Harden and LeBron James are going to go neck and neck for MVP, though I don't talk about that award before, probably February. But with that being said, the San Antonio Spurs have only 8 losses without what I consider a top 2 or 3 player in the entire game, Kawhi Leonard. Once he comes back, if he's able to play at that level, they will be in the conference finals.
Wow.
Okay, so I don't know if that means.
So who's out in your mind? Who would be out then? The Warriors or the Rockets?
They will be there, and we all know this. We all know that they're going to be there. And what I've seen from the San Antonio Spurs is what is growing now in Boston. If you gave Danny Ainge, Doug Collins taught me this word, some sodium pentothal, this truth serum, and you asked him, who would you take, Kyrie or Brad Stevens? Who you think he picked?
I don't know, but I want to know the answer.
He picked Brad Stevens.
Wow.
Because the things we're saying about the Boston Celtics this year and Kyrie Irving, we actually said about the Celtics and Isaiah Thomas last year.
Right.
Because they were the number 1 seed then also. So San Antonio has been that standard bearer, and I think when Kawhi comes back, they're going to be dangerous.
So we're talking about a lot of the normals, Cleveland, the Warriors, San Antonio. The team that is so much fun to watch because Ben Simmons is incredible.
Yes.
Joel Embiid is incredible. They're sitting at 13-11, so they can be certainly a playoff team this year. But how long before you think this team can challenge?
I think they'll start to challenge when you see other veteran all-star players in their own right decide that they're going to go sign and play in Philadelphia. Even though they have Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, terrific young players, I've talked about them for the last couple of years now. It's great to actually see them out there on the floor performing. Covington is an underrated three-point shooter that doesn't get a lot of props. We'll see if they sign J.J. Redick, who's on a 1-year deal in the offseason. But playing in the East, when you have 2 All-Stars like they're going to have this year, that puts you in the conversation to be around 4 or 5. Now, if they can add somebody, like I mentioned, say a Paul George happens to shake loose and go there, or a player like that now catapults them into the conversation of the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers. But right now, those 2 teams are so head and shoulders above everyone else, it just becomes a different conversation when you start to talk about other teams that are playing well, including the Toronto Raptors and the Detroit Pistons.
Well, the Sixers are obviously interesting because Embiid is so interesting. I mean, the thing he said about the trade for Jahlil Okafor, I love you and I'm going to kick your bleep 4 times a year. The guy he's a breath of fresh air, and I think exactly what a lot of people are looking for in the NBA right now.
He's a great personality, and you're going to get that from Enes Kanter playing in New York City also.
Yeah. Already trolling LeBron.
Yeah. No question. Young players that understand that while I could be productive on the floor with my points, rebounds, and assists, this is all about entertainment as well.
Right.
So I can get the fans involved. If I could be somebody that's fun-loving to the media, it adds to what we're trying to get accomplished, especially in those large media markets.
Well, look, you have to, in an 82-game season, which is what it is, you have to do that, especially when less than half the teams are eliminated from the postseason.
Right.
The entertainment factor does come into it a lot more.
Because think about it. We're talking about Philly. We're not mentioning the fact they lost to the Lakers last night, and they just lost to the Phoenix Suns the other day.
Yeah. Real quick, any problem with what Lonzo did? Lonzo Ball, dishing back. We have the percentages out there. He's driving the baseline. Everybody collapsed. It's a 44% chance he can make that. He kicks it out to a guy for a 33% chance to make the 3. He made the 3. They won the game.
I appreciate what Second Spectrum brings to ESPN, and I remember using them on NBA Countdown. But that wasn't a 44% shot, him driving baseline, if you've been watching him play all year.
Yeah. That's true.
Okay,
that's
number
true.
1. And number 2, when he goes up to shoot it, 1 or 2 of those guys are going to actually contest that shot, if not block that shot. And 3, his confidence as a shooter is so very low.
Right.
So you give up a good shot in the corner, you drive baseline to your strong hand, your right hand, and you hope they help. Please help, please. Oh, please, I don't know what I'm going to do in this baseline. Oh, he's wide open.
There you go.
Yes, now you shoot that thing.
Not you now.
And now I get the assist, and Magic tweets that I need to play with that tempo every night.
Hashtag I did my part. Jalen, we appreciate you being with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate the love.
Here's what's coming up on ESPN Radio this weekend. Vikings at Panthers. Good game there. Coverage starting at noon Eastern. Then at 4 Eastern, it will be the Titans at the Cardinals.
Golic and Wingo powering through on a Friday morning. You mentioned it in the last segment. There really are, starting last night with the game between the Falcons and the Saints, a boatload of good games this weekend. You have the Raiders and the Chiefs, both at 6-6, tied atop the division in the AFC West. You have the Vikings and the Panthers, which is also a great game. You've got Seattle and Jacksonville, also a very good game. And that Jacksonville game is interesting because you alluded to it a little bit in the last segment. Russell Wilson, he probably won't win the MVP, but he should be on a very short list.
Absolutely right.
I mean, again, we said this all week, and I'll say it again, 30 touchdowns offensively for Seattle. Russell Wilson has had a hand in 29 of them, 26 touchdown passes, 3 rushing touchdowns. Only 1 offensive touchdown, J.D. McKissick, did not come off the arm or feet of Russell Wilson. And the way they play is scramble for your life because the offensive line has had their issues, and Russell go make plays. He's going to have to do that against the Jacksonville Jaguars team. That's exactly how they want you to play because they believe in their front seven and their ability to dominate anybody, and that's the strength of that defense. Now, granted, they got Boye and Jalen Ramsey as great corners, but they want to get after the quarterback. They have the most sacks of anybody in the league. We always talk about strength-on-strength matchups. I think this strength-on-weakness matchup will determine this.
Completely agree. They have 11 different players that have a sack on that defense, so it's not just coming from Calais Campbell leads the way with 12.5 sacks. But they have a number of guys that can get to the quarterback. And by the way, when you say 45 sacks, then you double that or triple that to the number of pressures.
Correct.
So again, it's getting Russell Wilson to move, which he is so good at. But Jacksonville may have the ability to cover that up a little bit. So that's a big feather in the cap of Jacksonville, though. Every week, man, Russell Wilson just puts on that cape and is able to do it. He does it against this pass rush, this defense, man. He may jump and vault himself to the top of that MVP race, which we think is him, Carson Wentz, Tom Brady is probably the top 3
Maybe
right now.
some Case Keenum votes in there, but probably not. Although they should be.
Yeah,
and that leads us to the Vikings and Panthers. Real questions here. Do you believe the Panthers can find a way to get something going against that Vikings defense, which travels? They went to Atlanta last week and shut down the Falcons.
Love the Vikings defense. Again, we're talking about a Vikings team with an offense and a defense, both in the top 5. So, but that defense, I just love what they're doing. They're holding teams to under 78 yards a game running the ball.
Yeah.
So they're doing so well with that. Again, a physical, smart defense as well. They don't get caught out of position an awful lot. So this is another one, and we keep talking about Carolina and what Christian McCaffrey has done. He's brought a new dimension, just like we thought he would, to that offense. Not running the ball as much, but catching the ball out of the backfield. Then you always look at Carolina and Cam Newton. How is he going to play? Is he going to play kind of his freelancing, running way, and just kind of, throwing caution to the wind and just doing his thing? That's when Carolina is at its best. That means maybe Cam doesn't have the long career you always want, but the best Carolina is going to be is when Cam is doing that type of thing.
All right, so that should just about wrap it up for us here on a Friday on Golic and Wingo. Again, we all have better days than others.
Scott Frost, the new coach at Alabama, joining us now. He's your Home Depot Coach of the Year.
Alabama?
No, it wasn't Alabama. It was
Alabama.
Nebraska. And then, there was also this.
That's DollarShaveClub.com/Mike. Back after this, Mike and Mike.
You said Mike and Mike.
I love that in the back with you.
So we're all learning. We're all getting to this process as we finish week 2 on Golic and Wingo. Unfortunately for us here at ESPN, it's also the last day that you'll see Herm Edwards on our air.
Yep.
He came here in January 2009. He's one of my favorite people to work with at all time. We'll miss him. And Herm, as you go to your new endeavor, just remember.
You play to win the game.
And he'll win a lot at Arizona State. Thanks for listening.
See you.